Well, hello there. I hope you can hear me okay. This is a semi-quick little thing. I don't really have a Bluetooth microphone that's worth a damn, so there's all sorts of places where I can put my phone to yell at it. Let's just hope that I find one where I'm understandable at a bare minimum. So, what is it, Tails? Sorry. I am watching my middle aunt. My middle aunt has 2 cats, and I'm watching both of them, and one of them is very noisy. And I never know what she wants, because if I get near her, she's just going to growl at me, and then eventually even hiss at me, maybe even swipe at me. And then go back to rubbing her face against things. She's very bipolar. I don't know what's going on with her. Anyways, so yeah, I've got an older aunt, I've got a younger aunt, and I got a middle aunt. So I've got the youngest aunt. She's still older than I am. Anyways, so the other day I was watching a YouTube video, as I do, because it's free, and it was by H Bomber Guy, and he's a good old-fashioned bread tuber. I like his content. He just really recently, as of this recording, he did a real slam dunk on people who just do plagiarism for their content and the like. But this was one of his older videos that I was watching just the other day, and I almost had to stop because it rang too true. And before I even really got that far into it, I realized that I was going to have to record this, because it was bringing up a lot of feelings and emotions that seemed very, very familiar to me. See, H Bomber Guy, he was talking about adapting H.P. Lovecraft. That's what he was talking about. That's what his video was all about. Adapting H.P. Lovecraft and his work. And so it was a fun little video. And he was talking about one particular supposed very loose adaptation of Shadow over Innsmouth. Sorry. Shadow over Innsmouth. It's a pretty famous H.P. Lovecraft story. It's free on YouTube. You can listen to it. I don't think I've reviewed it, but I should have. I wrote down my thoughts on it on a message board. It's very the way that H.P. Lovecraft approaches horror. It's very specific. He doesn't do jump scares or anything like that. He doesn't do gross out horror. Once he gets you, he squeezes and grinds. And that's the way it felt to me, is that once he had gotten to the point which was supposed to be the scary part, they squeezed and grinded, and it was a very, very specific. I'd never encountered any horror author ever that approached that approached horror in that particular way. And that was just The Shadow over Innsmouth. I haven't looked at any of his other... I haven't read or listened to an audiobook version of any of his other works, but that's besides the point. This is about H. Bomber Guy and his YouTube video spawning this recording and whatever the hell I managed to do with it. Upload it on YouTube. Don't upload it on YouTube. There's lots of things I can do with this, but so H. Bomber Guy was talking about trying to adapt Lovecraft's work and how, you know, damn near impossible it really is because of these very specific way that that H.P. Lovecraft does horror. And that is a very common topic. I've listened to a lot of different YouTube videos. I may have even watched one or two. You know those videos that are kind of listenable? That's what I'm going for. That's what I'm going for with these recordings anyways. But that's how he sort of started the video. It was going to be yet another video of somebody talking about how difficult, borderline impossible, it is to adopt H.P. Lovecraft's work. Then he begins to talk about a very specific example. This example is a film that he initially did not like, which was that very loose adaptation of Shadow over Innsmouth, but it was completely queer-coded from start to finish, very overtly. And whenever H. Bomber Guy first came across it, while he was quite young, whenever he first came across it, he didn't like it. But he also wasn't out of the closet as a bisexual man. It was only later on that he truly realized why he didn't like it. And it was essentially because he had been sort of trained not to like it. Now, H. Bomber Guy, I'm not quite sure how old he is. And I definitely don't know where and when he grew up and under what circumstances. Did he go to private school? Did he go to public school? You know, what happened in his life? I can remember even whenever I joined the United States Army Senior Reserve Officer Training Corps. That's the one, you know, you've got JROTC. That's the one that's in high school. But SROTC, that's the one that pays you to go to college. So even whenever I joined it, I had to call out one of the seniors. I was a junior whenever I joined. I had to call out one of the seniors for saying that something that he considered bad was gay. South Park had that whole episode about how the F slur, it involves, you know, I think it's not something that I could actually say on YouTube, but it involves an F, a G, and an A. It's time for you to do some Mad Libs, right? Word scramble, right? So that was an incredibly common insult, and South Park had that whole episode about how they don't consider that an insult that is specific to the LGBT community, and that's not what it means. And instead, they are very specifically describing somebody who is insanely annoying and they had the straw man about very loud bikers, motorcyclists, I guess, people who own motorcycles, whatever you can call them, whatever they call themselves. And so they said, whenever you're really annoying, whenever you're, kind of being an asshole and everything, that's the word that they used. And it was sort of the same thing. It was sort of the same situation. That was very common whenever I grew up. Now, notably, I joined the United States Army Senior Reserve Officer Training Corps. I joined it in late 2014. It was senior, or it was fall semester 2014, and that was in Southern Illinois University of Edwardsville. Whether or not the particular whether or not that particular senior that I had to, confront or remind that you can't just call something that you consider bad gay, whether or not that person graduated, moved on to become an Army officer, may or may not still be in the Army, I simply don't know. And I don't even remember that particular person's name. And so even if I wanted to look it up, I'd be able to, but I'm not one of those people that really truly believes in, doxing a person for a sort of a figure of speech that he had been trained into being, right? So the whole thing with H-Bomber Guy. H-Bomber Guy figured that the reason that he didn't like this film that was queer-coded was because essentially, at the end of the day, he had kind of been trained not to like it. Since he wasn't out of the closet as a bisexual man yet, he had essentially been trained that homosexual activities, homosexual anythings, was synonymous with something that's bad. That was his training. That's what he figured inside the video. That was the gist from what I got of his video. If I'm misrepresenting him, it's not my intention. I could have terrible, I guess you could call it, reading comprehension, but whatever it was, that's what I got from it. I got, from what I understand, his idea was that he had essentially been trained to dislike this film, and that's why he disliked this film. And it wasn't until he fully accepted himself for who he was that he began to look at this film in another light. So we all caught up on H-Bomber Guy? Good. All right. So the big thing was that, I can understand exactly where he's coming from. And I had a quite similar tale. It wasn't too far into his YouTube video that I immediately knew that I was going to have to record this, because I had a very similar tale. Now, it goes in a different way. Big reveal, I too am a bisexual male. I'm not saying that to be trendy or cool. I really don't think that that is going to work. If that was my intention. But at some point in time, people were very insistent that that was the only reason why anybody, said that they were bisexuals, because it was trendy or cool, or because, at times. What in the hell was that? What in the hell was that movie? Dodgeball with Vince Vaughn. At the end of the movie, the protagonist love interest, she kisses a girl, and then they said, oh my goodness, she's she's not going to be with Vince Vaughn because she's a lesbian. And she's like, no, I'm bisexual. And everybody's like hooting and hollering, like, oh my goodness, that's a good thing, right? It's a very 90s way of approaching that whole situation. But so I'm not saying that to be trendy. I used to tell my littlest brother that I'm in the prestigious I slept with a man once club. So the whole thing, I'm very picky about it. I am I forget how the Kinsey scale works, but it's like it's like a scale of like 1 to 7. And I think I'm like a 2 or a 6, depending on how it works. It's like I'm very picky about the men that I'm attracted to, but I'm attracted to a great number of different women. Anyways. So, I think that H Bomber guy's video, it probably is it resonates with a lot of different people. I'm pretty sure that it struck a chord with a great many different people out there, and I'm hoping that it got as much coverage as possible. But it's still a sort of thing today. My cousin of mine was in North Carolina, and he was attending a college that was in a kind of a sort of preppy-ish area, I guess. And it was in general for like higher income sort of people. And that's what I gathered. I don't know exactly what school it was, but he was in that area, and the whole thing about that area was that there was a lot of students that was going to that college, and they were on one of those plans where you attend high school, but you take classes that are either college level or something like that, and essentially you leave high school with an associate's degree, which is a fun little program. It's a great head start in life and bloody. It wasn't something that was offered in my area. I'd never even heard about this until fairly recently. It might not have even been a thing whenever I was dropped out of high school, and when my mother dropped me out of high school for a free babysitter whenever I was 17 years old, and then I joined the military 2 years later in 2007. So I don't know if it was even a thing back then, but that's something that's a cousin of mine ran into quite a bit whenever he was attending this particular college, university, whatever it was, community college. So a lot of his classmates were, quite a bit younger than him. He dealt with a lot of high school people, high school age people, these sorts of things. And he's very open. He's very open about being bisexual himself. Runs the family, I guess. And so, since he was very open about all of this, there was a lot of high schoolers that were doing very high school things, and he's not really used to all of this because he was homeschooled the majority of his life. He graduated high school at age 14, so he wasn't really used to all of this. But I guess that being around our family, we trained him up right. He's just he's a lot. He's got some. He's not bad in social interactions. He considers himself awkward, but I really don't know anybody else who does. So he's got humility going for him at a bare minimum. But he said, high schoolers are the way that high schoolers are, and even these obvious AP level smart kids were still doing the high schooler thing, and we're whispering behind his back and trying to start rumors about him and stuff like that. And, oh, I heard a rumor that you're one of them gay fellows. And he's like, yeah, I'm bisexual. And they're like, oh, and they said it was the oddest thing in the world running into these people. He thought that they were going to be gone by the time high school was over, by the time that he was in college in any way, shape, or form. And well, not for him, I guess. Not for him. I personally haven't run into these people, but like I said, I did have that experience in 2014 with as a junior in college, witnessing a senior that was in Army Senior Reserve Officer Training Corps, for goodness sake, who should have known better, call something gay by whenever what he meant was to say that something was bad. It was like, oh my goodness, we're gonna have to get up at 4 a.m. tomorrow to set up everything for this big ruck march or something. And he was like, oh, that's gay. He's very clearly, there's nothing gay about a ruck march. Not that it's the most manly thing in the world either. It's not the exact opposite, but that's what he meant, and I had to call him out on it. I said, hey, you can't say that. You're gonna get yourself in trouble. And he's like, oh, yeah. So he caught himself. Even whenever I was an underclassman, I think the military would be more about pulling rank and stuff like that, but that's more of an enlisted thing. I was active duty for a little while, and 4 years in the Navy, so I definitely encountered that. I'm just like, hey, you can't say that. And they're like, you're below me in rank. You can't talk to me like that. You can't tell me what I can and can't do or say. Get real uppity about it. But I didn't get too much of that whenever I was Army Senior Reserve Officer Training Corps. Sorry, pardon me. I have to feed my compost. So that's what I'm doing in the background. Yeah, I know. I wish I was a dedicated YouTuber or something that could produce high quality content, but instead I'm a pre-med student, so you're lucky you get anything at all. And this content sucks, so maybe you're unlucky. I don't know. Your choice. So, this is quite a strange experience for him. It's quite a strange experience for me. Struck a chord with me and everything. But all of this was something that was quite different. I experienced this in a different way. It was sort of a different thing. You see, what I experienced was something that was very similar to H-Bomber Guy, but it was about a completely separate topic. Sure, I'm also a bisexual person. Don't worry, H-Bomber Guy is not my type. I'm not about to hit up his DMs. But, and I'm a pre-med student, so I'm no one's type. So it's not like I'm the prize. Anyhow, I had watched a movie that I didn't like before I joined the military, and even had rewatched it during the military. Somebody put it on, I had to re-experience it during the military, and I really didn't like it both times. But it was only after the military that it became one of my absolute favorites, and it was for that completely different reason. The movie was Jarhead, and the reason, I guess, might have been because I was trained to dislike it. So in that respect, me and H-Bomber Guy had kind of had the exact same experience, but in different ways. So, what do I mean? You know how there's this huge amount of anti-war films out there, anti-war media in general, that after its release, recruiting numbers for the U.S. military go up. Well, so there's like a couple of examples, right? You've got your Full Metal Jacket, of course, all throughout my active duty military career, all 4 years, and on into U.S. Army Senior Reserve Officer Training Corps, and all throughout my time in U.S. Navy active drilling reserves. All that time, I continued to keep hearing good old that movie quoted again and again and again. You know, how tall are you, Private Pile? I didn't know they stacked shit that high. Full Metal Jacket. It was constant. It was consistent. And it's weird, right? Because it's an anti-war film, but since it showed action towards the end, that was that. From what I've seen, for people's sort of diagnosis about this whole thing, like what's happening, why anti-war films result in higher amounts of people recruited every single time. The reason why all these things were happening was because, whenever they show action, it doesn't matter what the message of the movie is. It gets lost in the spectacle. So imagine if I was giving this enormous, to a great many people, this whole crowd, I was giving this enormous speech about saving the environment, peace on earth, love one another, all this kind of stuff. And I was giving all of this speech and everything, but I was doing it in front of like this huge fireworks display. Would people remember what the hell my speech was about? No, of course not. And that was the conclusion behind all of this. You show combat, you show it being real cool, you show all this kind of gobbledygook, and then it's over. You've made an anti-war film that is 100% going to result in increased recruiting numbers after the film is released. Happens every time. We see this phenomenon over and over and over again, ad nauseum. So that's that. That was the grand conclusion behind all the analyses that I was able to dig up about this particular phenomenon. And we see this. This is solid data. This isn't just like this isn't a puff piece. This isn't an essay. This isn't an opinion. Nothing like this. This is solid data. Someone releases an anti-war piece. Recruiting numbers go up. Bingo, bango, bongo. Again and again and again and again. And that's so strange. Because whenever it comes to Full Metal Jacket, everybody remembers the first half of the movie where everybody's in boot camp, where there's no action going on. Private Powell shoots the drill instructor at the end of the movie, or at the end of that first half of the movie. That's all the action. That's all. That's it. So that's the only action. That's it. And that's the part that everybody remembers. But the claim is, by all the people that I was able to dig up about this particular phenomenon, the claim is that because there's action towards the back half of the movie, you don't have to remember the action itself. You don't have to remember you don't have to remember that they spent all that time trying to go after a sniper, and the sniper turned out to be a kid. I think that was the end of the film. I haven't seen it in quite some time. You don't have to remember that part, just like you don't have to remember the individual fireworks, right? Well, there was a one that went up in the air and it went blah, and then it went like this, and it made all this sound that was like blah, and it was kind of like yellowish first, and then it kind of was like orangish, and then it was a deep red, and then it was purple for just that last couple of seconds, and then I think it turned green. But that was about, you don't have to remember the individual things about the fireworks, just like you don't have to remember all the bits and pieces about the action towards the end of the movie. That was the conclusion by all these different people that were sort of theorizing about this thing where if you release an anti-war movie, it doesn't matter what the hell the message is. It'll get lost if you put action in the film. That was the grand conclusion by all the powers that be that I was able to find. Let's be honest, probably on YouTube. And it made enough sense to me. And whenever it came to good old-fashioned Jarhead, there was no action. Wasn't a thing. I think some jets blew up a thing, but that was about it. Essentially, from what I remember, there was no action. It was that, but perhaps it succeeded in not having increased recruiting numbers after the film came out. And if it did, it was likely because of this sincere lack of mano-a-mano, man versus man action. Right? So, just like H. Bomber Guy couldn't really put his finger on exactly why he didn't like the film that he at first did not like, this supposed adaptation, very, very loosely based off of H.P. Lovecraft's Shadow over Innsmouth. Just like he didn't like it, that movie, that film, the first time he saw it, I didn't like Jarhead the first time I saw it, maybe even the second time. I can't really remember whether or not I was forced to watch it again while I was in the military. I seem to remember doing so, but not really specifically. And just like H. Bomber Guy couldn't really put his finger on why he didn't like that film upon first viewing, I couldn't put my finger on why exactly I didn't like Jarhead my first viewing. But I sure did change my mind after my time active duty. And suddenly, it became one of my favorite films. Because it struck a chord. In this way, we are incredibly similar. And almost exclusively in that way. H. Bomber Guy makes incredible content that might even save lives. And by that I mean at a bare minimum with his plagiarism video. You know, there's people that could have to quit YouTube because they, you know, their content is being plagiarized, you know. Yeah, there's a lot of money being stolen from the pockets of people, you know, who might have to go do something else. And whenever it comes to for employment changes, that could mean quite a bit to people, and it could even cost someone their lives if they can't make enough money for rent, food, etc., or just to live in a manner that doesn't make them so depressed that they end up, you know, possibly even ending their own lives. So we have this lone thing in common between me and H. Bomber Guy, and literally nothing else. Man is better than me in every way. How about them apples? So anyway, anyhow, I had read a lot of media. I had consumed a lot of military-related media throughout my life. I credit, out of all things, the thing that really I credit it with inspiring me to join the military more than anything at all was the video game, the anti-war video game, Metal Gear Solid 3 for the PlayStation 2, which has just been re-released for the newest generation of consoles, possibly remastered. I'm not entirely sure everything that they've done for it, but So, I credit that more than anything else for inspiring me to join the military. And it is an anti-war film. By the way, just recently remembered one of my big pieces of media that I consumed regarding this whole, anti-war media and its effects on recruiting numbers. So I want to give a big shout out to at least one little piece of the puzzle here, which was another YouTuber, and a brilliant one at that, good old-fashioned Super Bunny Hop. Before he came along, I didn't know what the hell happened in Metal Gear Solid 2 and what it meant. No idea. Played it way back whenever I was like 12 years old or something. Had no idea what the hell happened. So, point positive, Super Bunny Hop, very smart, intelligent man who was able to explain a plot as convoluted as Metal Gear Solid 2 in a way that an enormous dummy like myself was able to understand. So that's at least one anti-war piece of coverage where I got part of the analysis that I've been alluding to this entire time. He made one specific video about it, but he's also covered a lot of Metal Gear content and many videos, in many ways. Whenever I put that down in writing in a forum that I was visiting at the time, somebody said, wow, that's really backwards. There's this whole thing with Metal Gear Solid 3 trying to convince you to not be anything like this soldier, big boss, but you still had it inspire you to join the military. And I said, big boss? No. Who inspired me was the boss, the primary antagonist in the game. It was she that inspired me. I wanted to be just like her whenever I grew up. But, she's a fictional person. So. Plus, it was revealed in Peace Walker that there was something wrong with her brain. So, without that particular condition, I guess I was doomed from the start. Plus, she's a fictional human being, so that's kind of a wrench in the plan. But, and I'm not saying that this particular carpenter that we have many historical records for, I'm not saying that this particular person is mythological himself, but the whole thing behind what would Jesus do, that bracelet, that mindset and everything is, not, it's not something where the people who wear those bracelets and ask themselves that question, it's not a thing where they're sort of, trying to be, Jesus Christ, the Christian faith Lord and Savior, and God in human flesh. The point is to shoot for the stars and land in the clouds, right? So I was raised Christian myself. I very much believe that Jesus Christ was a human being. I'm now Buddhist, but so just to make that abundantly clear so that I don't end up accidentally offending any fellow Christians or like myself, former Christians. So I wanted to be just like the boss of Metal Gear Solid 3 fame. And that was my inspiration. That's what convinced me to join the military. That's what I credit for my inspiration anyway. And Metal Gear Solid 3 itself, much like I just, said, it's an anti-war series. It's been going on for longer than I've been alive. Metal Gear 1 for the MSX was released before I was even born. I think by a couple months. I believe it was released in 1987, and so was I. That's when I was released. They let me out of the character creation screen at that point in time. My character sheet is terrible. Anyways. Human fighter, really? So plain. Ugh. Anyhow. So, this whole anti-war thing and its effects on recruiting numbers, I've also been a victim of it myself. And I've had my own fictional writings. I used to look around at various children around me that were doodling to pass the time in the middle of class, and I figured that like they're somehow or another they have like this innate ability to draw, and I didn't have it since I couldn't draw very well. And so as a result of that level of thinking, I ended up writing a lot of fictional stories, and so I became decent at writing. I don't know if I've ever received a poor grade on an essay in any class ever. Not to brag, but I got really good at writing. So I even myself, whenever I write military-centric things in some way, shape, or form, that I struggle the same way that I think Hideo Kojima did whenever he was putting together the series, where you try to make some anti-war stuff, because of course if I'm going to write about some wartime stuff, I'm not a warmonger. I don't know too many people that are really pro-war in general. Like, who's sitting there going like, oh man, you know what I like? A bunch of kids and civilians dying with the flimsiest of excuses for being, military targets and during World War II and stuff like that. That's what we need more of, is more innocent people dying. That's really great. Can I get some more of that? Pretty please with cheese on top? I don't know anybody who's really pro-war, is what I'm trying to say. So, of course, if I'm going to do something myself, it's going to be very similar. It's going to be a pro-war thing, but I want to put the action in there. And for me, I've thought through everything, and I've decided to add the action that I want to be there, regardless of its possible effects of somebody consuming this media and its effects on recruiting. And so I myself have thought through this. So Hideo Kojima, whenever he was making this whole series, various times it's been theorized that he likely had to struggle with this whole dichotomy himself. Like, the fact that, hey, David Hayter, the voice actor for Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, and the voice actor for Big Boss and 3 and Peace Walker and 4 and Solid Snake and 4 and am I missing any? You know, he's been voicing this character and this character's father for a very, very long time. Since sometime in the 90s, if I'm doing my math correctly here. So, every now and again he gets approached at a Comic-Con or somewhere else where he's doing an appearance, I guess, and people will thank him and tell them that that they joined the military because of David Hayter, the voice actor, and his incredible performance with playing as Snake, whether that is Naked Snake, Solid Snake, or any of his other iterations where David Hayter was the voice actor at that point in time for that particular character. And he always says the same thing. He's horrified, and he says, please don't do that. Because, of course, David Hayter doesn't want to be responsible for someone sort of, you know, losing their lives because of his voice, because of his job. And so he tells them, you know, please don't do that. You know, please don't join the military because of my voice acting performance, for goodness sake. Now, I've long pointed out the fact that at the end of the day, the military is simply not as dangerous as people make it out to be, essentially. Whenever you do the actual statistical mathematics, all you got to do is look up the rate of death by being murdered on purpose and the rate of death by some form of accident. Look up those rates in the civilian world and look up those rates in the military. Look up those rates, you know, how often does this happen? And you'll find that, you know, add the two and compare them to one another. And you'll find the shocking fact that you are 10 times safer in the military than living in, growing up in Illinois. That was the statistics whenever I looked them up while I was part of U.S. Army Reserve Officer, Senior Reserve Officer Training Corps. I don't know whether or not those facts and everything have changed, but that was the facts of the matter as I was able to put them together at the time. And so that's something that I've very, very frequently brought up time and time and time again. It's like these were the statistics that I was able to put up at the time. And it was only like in retrospect after I really thought about it that it made sense, because at the time the United States military were largely involved in combative situations with terrorists, and terrorists do not want to fight the military. The military can fight back. They're trying to strike fear. They're trying to strike terror. Their preferred target is civilian targets. That is the preferred target of terrorists. It's the military's job to desperately try to get in between terrorists and their intended targets. Whenever I was in the military, terrorists did not want to hurt me. They wanted to hurt you. Unless, of course, I am speaking to a fellow member of the military. Which now I'm not. I'm a veteran, but so if I was speaking to from military to military, then that would be one thing. But otherwise, terrorists at the time, they were primarily after civilian targets. So it only really made sense in retrospect. So I believe the panic involving the idea that the military is a dangerous place and blah blah blah. I don't believe that it's backed up statistically. I really don't. And I know that that's wild, and no matter how much scientific data that you are given, you're never going to shake the feeling that somehow or another the military is more dangerous than being a civilian in some respects. I know full well, it's data. It's the lowest. It's the lowest possible thing. It's like putting the calories and fat and protein content, nutritional facts on the outside of every single fast food order. It doesn't deter people from eating. It's data. The double cheeseburger is still going to be as delicious as your opinion about double cheeseburgers. Either way, it sounds great to me right now. But that's that. So it doesn't matter how much data that I present to you, is what I'm trying to say. It's not going to change the way that you feel, and the way that you feel is going to guide your decisions, by and large, for the most part. And you'll get insane amount of conspiracy theories that people will be convinced that, they're skewing the numbers somehow, as if they could hide somebody who's perished wholesale completely. It's like, obviously this person who was a military member and had like a family, etc. Like, no, the military can't like hide a human being wholesale and make them magically not fit into the category of this person died on purpose versus this person died on accident. Somehow or another, they can make a human being magically not fit into one of those two categories. Conspiracy theories. I've dealt with a lot of these people, and what I'm saying is, I'm not going to be able to change your mind. I'm fully accepting of that. I give up. It's not the point of this particular recording. So there you go. I don't know. Anyways, so that's part of the reason why I don't really give a crap about the effects that my writings about military stories. I don't really care about whether or not it dries up recruitment. Overall, statistically, from what I've been able to gather, it seems that a person's safer in the military than outside of the military. But that's just my opinion and whatnot. It's one of the many reasons why I do the things that I did. But whenever it came to whenever it came to the way that Hideo Kojima faced this problem, you know, he had to face this problem as much as anybody else. And he attempted to reward people for using non-violent methods to do this, that, and the other within his games, his separate media. And that became more and more of the focus and everything. But the problem is he had to do a lot of Hollywood isms, you know. So here's something. You can look up infinite footage of people in martial arts classes getting knocked out. Infinite footage. Boxers getting knocked out. Fighters of all types getting knocked out. People in judo, jiu-jitsu classes being choked out and stuff like that. And how long are they knocked out? How long are they knocked out? Come on. They are knocked out for seconds. If that. They are knocked out for seconds. Roki. So, you can't be like Solid Snake or whatever and go punch somebody and have them sleep for like 60 seconds or longer. If a person sleeps for 60 seconds or longer, they likely have a concussion. And it's certainly not like a lot of Hollywood movies out there that have people like get knocked out for like a day or two. That's ridiculous. That person's not going to wake up. Okay, well, what about tasers? I can remember there was a there was a man that used to work for Cracked.com, and was in a lot of their videos on their YouTube channel. And I love Cracked. I greatly respect Cracked. I continue to do so to this day. But this particular person was detached from reality, and now he continues to run his own YouTube channel focused around news. And there was a particular puff piece where he was talking about somebody who lost their lives due to a police action against a certain human being. And the police were talking about, like, what are we supposed to do? And he said, well, why not just tase them or something like that? As if there's not also infinite footage that you can look up about people fighting through being tased, fighting through being maced, fighting through these things. Hell, in order to be issued police grade mace, you have to be maced in the eyes and fight through. That's what the course is called. That's what the actions are called. It's called fighting through. It's the fight through course, stuff like that. I should know because I was military police. Police who are issued tasers is the same thing. And guess what happens? Every now and again, you mace somebody in the eyes, and they have a negative reaction. It may be a combination of different things, like laying on their stomach and stuff like that, whether it's on the ground or in the back of a police cruiser or something like that. And they lose their lives from being maced in the eyes. And mace, need I remind you, is something that you can just buy as a civilian and like have it at the dollar store. And this particular person that used to work for crack was sitting there like, oh, it's obvious. Obviously, you know, instead of shooting a person who's resisting arrest, just to, you know, pepper spray them or tase them or something. Hey, you know, moron, do some research. It's supposed to be your job. Do some research and see that that's not a foolproof plan. Police officers are trained to shoot center mass. I should know. I was military police. No, that's not the same as regular police officers. Blah, blah, blah. By and large, for the most part, I would say almost, you know, ubiquitously across the board, being a real police or a civilian police officer is likely to be orders of magnitude more difficult than being military police. At a bare minimum, it's more difficult than anything that I had to do whenever I was military police, either active duty, active drilling reserves, anything, everything. So their jobs are more difficult than anything that I was forced to do. And I say that because, first, I truly believe that it's true, of course. But also because everybody in my jurisdiction, whenever I was military police, all of those people were, at some point in time, declared sane. They all passed a criminal background check. Like I said, whenever I was in the, whenever I was active duty, it was 2007. I was active duty 2007 to 2011. That's whenever I was active duty. You know, that was a long time after the days and ages where you had to choose between getting arrested and serving the military. Stuff like that, you know, that was over. They didn't do that stuff anymore. And I joined an all-volunteer force. Whether or not we had some people grandfathered in that were still, you know, former criminals who had to choose between serving the military and going to jail, I'm not sure. But you see the point that I'm trying to make. The people that I ended up, you know, having to enforce laws for, which I didn't enforce laws, I enforced rules. The military, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and the Manual for Courts Martial. Those were the things that I enforced. Those were the laws. And they were rules, essentially. That's the way it was. That's what I remember from how it was taught for me. Gotta be very careful about what I say, how I say it. Because things could have changed. Even at the time, it could have been, I could have had very poor reading comprehension, maybe misheard an instructor. All of these things could have been something that happened. So I'm just trying my best here to... But from what I remember, I was taught that they weren't actually laws at all, they were rules. And the people under my jurisdiction, they were declared sane at some point in time. They passed a criminal background check. They're simply easier to control. And I never had to pull... I never had a gun pointed at me. I never pointed my gun at anybody else. And as a direct result, I, of course, was never shot at, never had to shoot at anybody else. And outside of training, I never even put somebody in handcuffs. Not once. It never happened. Not during my time. Active duty, active drilling reserves, or especially during U.S. Army Senior Reserve Officer Training Corps. Of course not. So, that was my experience. Your experience may vary. But that's my opinion about the whole situation. However, I was taught to shoot center mass, and every single police officer that I worked with, often they would be in the military reserves, and so their full-time job would be police officer, and I would run into them. You've seen the commercials. The person in the commercial says it's 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. I would see them during their 2 weeks a year. Every single one of them that I ran into, they were also taught to shoot center mass. And normally whenever you shoot somebody, center mass, it's not fatal. Believe it or not, most gunshots are not fatal. Now, is a gunshot going to kill you? Does a gunshot have a higher chance of killing you than a taser or mace or any of these other things? Yes. I'm not going to lie to you. Yes. But the thing is, tasers, they're not universal. They don't, they're not non-lethal every single time. You also have to be a certain distance away. You can't just, tase somebody from across the known galaxy. Even with a stun gun or whatever. So in essence, while these non-lethal options are in fact non-lethal, even if they do work to do exactly what they say on the tin, to, incapacitate this suspect for a length of time, that length of time is remarkably short. People don't get knocked out for days or hours or whatever, not without likely to be permanent consequences. You understand? Like, these things are video games. These things are Hollywood. When somebody comes out of nowhere and socks a guy in the jaw, and then suddenly, and in whatever movie that you're watching, TV show that you're watching, they're out for hours, days, months, weeks, years, or whatever. It's Hollywood. It's not reality. So, whenever it comes to the non-lethal options that are there, of course, almost every single one of them are relatively close range, right? Spraying somebody with pepper spray, that's a close range thing. Using the old stun gun, that's a close range thing. And the almighty gun, I know it's going to be the more lethal of those options, but sometimes they're just too far away. Also, it's quicker and easier to use. Sometimes time is of the essence. According to the data that I seem to remember being taught about whenever I was an active duty military policeman, I guess. I try not to say police officer. People get confused whenever you say police officer, because an officer in the military is somebody that has a bachelor's degree and has been through officer training, and enlisted are people who not. So I'll go ahead and call myself a policeman, a military policeman, and refer to those of that have prefer to be called by the opposite sex. I'll call them policewomen for that particular purpose, just to be as careful as humanly possible. Whenever it comes to military stuff, people are very, very strict about it, about the way that everything is said and portrayed and everything. And you can tell I've gotten into lots of arguments about this kind of stuff, and I really don't like to argue with somebody who can rip my arms off and beat me to death with them. I was Navy, you know, I was not Marines, and I was not regular Army or anything. I'm not that tough. don't want to get in fights with these people. Don't want to get in any beef with these people. They can probably kill me quite easily. So people get very passionate about these things. So anyway, I was trained to shoot center mass. From what I remember, from what I was taught while I was active duty, supposedly it takes the average crook about 5 seconds to draw their weapon, get it on target, and shoot whenever it comes to guns, rifles, projectiles, missile in some capacity. I don't know, you think of a missile as a missile launcher, but it's not what the definition, it's not what the dictionary thinks of them as. Anyhow. So, these guns, apparently it takes the average person about 5 seconds to get it out, get it on target, and shoot. That's not a lot of time to reach for and whip out the old OC spray, say the words OC, OC, and then spritz this person across the eyes whenever they're trying to shoot you with a gun. It's like, you know, like, yo, if a person is firing a gun at you, it's you or them. Like, somebody's gonna go down, and only one of these two people are likely to be in a situation where their job is to uphold law and order. They try to make society into a thing where we're all safe, by and large, for the most part. And yes, I've also seen the cracked YouTube video about the many studies that confirm that police officers are not actually obligated to protect the citizens of their jurisdiction, etc. So I'm aware of all that, but their whole thing is like society, right? So it's like at some point in time, whenever you're looking at, like I said, a person firing, a person with a gun who's about to fire at a police officer, really is us or them. Me putting myself back in my old shoes as military police. And so people like that particular person that used to work cracked was in a lot of their YouTube videos and now runs their own channel revolving around news. People like them, they really don't see the full picture. So that's guns. That's proximity, that's distance, that's whether or not you have permission to fire, stuff like that, self-defense, bloody. That's all of that. And the flawed aspects of this, and the separation between Hollywood and regular people. That's all those topics covered very loosely and probably unsatisfactory to everybody, including myself, but you know, trying to stay away from topics that is not what this recording is about. Failing miserably. So what about the rubber batons? So you might have heard the word baton used to talk about expandable batons, or collapsible batons, I should say, which was the, baseball bat-ish sort of weapon that is often on a police officer's belt. It was also on mine. I became quite familiar with its use. I also never had to whip it out and strike somebody during my time. At any point in time in my life, I never had to hit somebody with it. Unless it was the foam training variant during that OC spray, police grade mace, fight through course. Aside from that, I never had to put that collapsible baton into use. But a lot of times, whenever you see a gun that shoots a non-lethal piece of ammunition, it's usually shooting a rubber baton. Or at least that's from what I'm familiar with. We didn't have those during my time as military police. It was never something that was issued to me. And what about SIM rounds as well? But SIM rounds are very, very specific to training environments. You do not want to be in the middle of a firefight or something and get your SIM rounds mixed up with your actual ammunition. And whenever it comes to somebody who's attempting to shoot you with live rounds, you having SIM rounds, that's not a good thing. Like I said, it's us or them. You have to make a choice. Who would you rather see dead? The person who is attempting to uphold a society where these sorts of violence things are not happening, or the person who isn't, who's trying to create a society where somebody, whether or not it's their job to uphold society, is being shot, they're trying to kill someone, right? Like, make your choice. Who would you rather be dead out of the two situations? The person who's breaking the law, or the person who's attempting to uphold it? Come on. This is a really easy choice. So, what about SIM rounds? It's a training thing. And SIM rounds usually don't stop people as well. They don't have the stopping power. But whenever it comes to non-lethal ammunition, what I'm familiar with is those that shoot rubber batons. So you'll have like a shotgun or something on these games or in this media or whatever, and they'll knock somebody out by having the firearm shoot a rubber baton. It's a rubber bullet, essentially. It's a baton, but it's very small enough to fit in the gun. So that's it. So what about one of them? Why don't you do that instead of shooting somebody with a lethal shot? That'll it'll take them out. One, it's also a distance problem. Two, it's not a handgun. It's a shotgun. So there's a distance issue with shotguns. From every game that you've played, every media that you've watched or whatever, or even possibly your actual experience with shotguns, you can't be halfway across the galaxy and shoot somebody with a shotgun and hope to do any damage. So there's also a distance problem, and also it's not non-lethal 100% of the time. You don't want to take these chances. So if any variation of snake, solid or otherwise, on these Metal Gear games shoot somebody with a rubber baton, and they're just knocked out for like a minute or two, or 5 minutes, or a day or something. That's not how knockouts work, and it's not non-lethal 100% of the time. And there's that whole distance issue, right? If you're going to try to use a non-lethal option that can fit into a person's gun belts, then you're going to fall back on one of the other two, not this rubber baton thing. Of course, you get shot in the eye with a rubber baton, you're not going to get knocked out. You're going to lose an eye, and it might kill you. Straight up. I'm not going to pull any punches for people who already believe that you can pull punches because they watch too many films and they play too many games like this. So these options that, a Solid Snake or any of the snakes are able to do on these video games, these non-lethal options, war without casualties, people who get knocked out for like 5 straight minutes, and then they get up and they're just fine, and there's no lasting damage whatsoever on these things. It's fiction. It's fiction. It doesn't happen in real life. You've got some other stuff, the prison yard stingers. So they're grenades that shoot out steel balls in every direction. Yes, people have lost eyes. Yes, that has killed people. Okie dokie. What about tranquilizer darts, okay? That was introduced in Metal Gear Solid 2 way back when. Your non-lethal option. Why don't people just go to war with tranquilizer darts? Well, it's already slower inside the game, but also anesthesiologists have to get through medical school. So they have to go to college. They have to get, at the bare minimum, a bachelor's degree. Then they have to get into an entirely separate institution called medical school with their bachelor's degree, or often more than that. They have to not just go in with a bachelor's degree, they have to go in with something huge. They have to go in with often with a master's degree, maybe even a doctorate, a PhD. Because getting into medical school is nearly impossible by design. Then they have to graduate after 4 more additional years on top of all the other things that they've already done. And then after all of that, they have to go through a 3 to 7 year residency on top of all that before they can even begin to practice being an being a doctor of anesthesia before they can do all of that. Because the line between knocking somebody out for a procedure for a length of time at all and killing a human being, that line is very, very thin. It's painfully thin. And of course, there have been anesthesiologists that have given too much anesthesia and killed the patient. And there's been anesthesiologists who have not given enough and had a patient wake up in the middle of a surgery. These things have happened before. And you think that because you saw it on TV, because you saw it on a video game, because of whatever, you believe that, the common man believes that you can just shoot criminals with a tranquilizer dart and knock them out instead of killing them. And if war was just fought with tranquilizer darts, then the world would be a better place. Sorry, but it doesn't work that way. So later on, so the dichotomy between lethal, non-lethal options and stuff like this that Hideo Kojima attempted to work around and try to portray a better and safer way to do war. All of this. What he presented was unrealistic options that us regular human beings can't do. These unrealistic options were not something that any of us here in reality could do. He gave you fiction. That was his way of reconciling these things, of making an anti-war series, and then still showing the action. How he dealt with the guilt of, if he had any, the guilt of each and every one of his games, each and every one of his media releases, driving up military recruitment numbers. How he dealt with all of that, I don't know. But the way he reconciled this was pure fiction, through and through. So with my fiction, whenever I write about the same topics, with my fiction, I try not to give this false dichotomy. I try not to do the Hollywood thing and pretend that you can just knock out the bad guy and then, you know, everybody lives happily ever after or something like that, and you can just do war without casualty. I try not to do that. It just perpetuates a stereotype that doesn't really help anybody. Sure, that the message gets through that, yeah, you should try and do war without casualty, but it produces people like that former, you know, cracked employee that does news pieces where his proposed solutions for real life problems are to use fictional solutions. He might as well be telling people to use, he might as well be telling the cops to use magic. It's just not something that's going to work. So then what was his next big thing? His next big thing, Hideo Kojima, I'm talking about here. Hideo Kojima's next big project is to try to release a game without violence as its primary core mechanic. So what did he do? He released Death Stranding. And what happens in Death Stranding? Well, if you kill somebody in Death Stranding, it's a gigantic pain in the ass, and you have to take them to a top of a volcano and chuck their body into it or whatever, because or else it'll kill you and a whole bunch of people around you and bloody with a huge thingamajig, you know, whatever the hell it's called. I didn't get all the way through from Death Stranding, by the way. But I do like it. I do really like the game. And it broke even. But people had a lot of trouble, you know, adopting this game because it was an anti-war game in a capacity. It was trying to send a peaceful message, and it was trying to do it without that action, without that military war, whatever. It was trying to be anti-war, but it was trying to do it in a way which was anti-war, I guess. It was trying to do it without the action, without driving up those recruiting numbers. I don't know whether or not that was his purpose. So how does he do this and still make an entertaining game? Well, as I said, it broke even. There was a lot of very mixed opinions about it, but it did manage to break even, but it didn't do as well as all of his other titles. But then still, at the end of the day, what did he use to reconcile this? Fiction. That's what he used, was fiction. You're sitting there playing as Sam Porter Bridges, played by Norman Reedus. And what can you do as Sam Porter Bridges? Well, you can go knock the living piss out of somebody and have them just knocked out, snoozing and snoring away for ages, even on the hardest possible mode. You can use these weird man catchers that if, whenever they do use them in real life, they don't do anywhere near what they do in the game. You can do all this crap that you can't do here in real life. He again reconciles this whole trying to make something that is pro-peace, anti-war, and his big solution to the issue is, well, his big solution for this issue is it's fictional. He doesn't have a solution. He doesn't have a real solution to reconcile all this. He continues to just use these delusional pieces of fiction that don't exist, that have never existed, that aren't real. And these non-solutions do exactly what's on the tin. They don't solve any problems. They don't solve anything. They just give people around the world false hope that we can have a new, better, safer battlefield where criminals can be stopped without any lasting effect on them, even whenever they've temporarily lost their mind because somebody laced their drink with PCP or something. So they stole somebody's gun, shot at a police officer, and the police officer can just knock him out with a tranquilizer dart real quick or choke him out, and then soon enough the drug wears off and everybody's happy, healthy, and wealthy going on forward. But no, that's not real. That's not real life. That's not what happens here in planet now. The planet Earth reality, the world that we live in. That's not what actually happens. All this is fictional. It's fiction. Here in non-fiction, the stuff that we have to deal with, we do as best as we can. The military is not trying to kill anyone. I know. That sounds completely contradictory. You're thinking, of course they're trying to kill someone. No, they're not. We're trained to shoot center mass, for goodness sake. We're trained to shoot, reassess, shoot, reassess. From what I remember, that was my training. Now, I was military police, so perhaps my training was a bit more non-violent than infantry or something like that. But that was how I was trained. We're trained to produce casualties on the battlefield to an extent. What we're really trained to do is to, at the end of the day, is to make the person who got us who gave us permission to shoot at them, who did all of the things necessary to that gave us permission to shoot at them, make them stop doing that, whatever it is. For example, the training that I remember was capability, opportunity, and intent. That gave me permission to fire. So somebody comes, there's someone else out there, and doing my job as military police. So somebody's out there, I'm sitting there doing my job as military police, and they're doing a bad thing or whatever. First and foremost, they need to be capable of ending my life for me to use deadly force upon them. Force that a person uses, causing, or that a person knows or should know could create death or serious bodily harm. That's just off the top of my head. I don't know if I jumbled up those words or anything. It's been a while since I've had to memorize that definition. But in order to give me permission to use deadly force, first they must be capable of doing deadly force to me in my capacity, in my job as military police. They first must be capable. So some person that's stealing or whatever, and they're stealing, I don't know, a bunch of shirts off of the rack at the basic exchange on base, which is kind of a supermarket type of thing. Well, shirts aren't capable of, not via the definitions. You could probably kill somebody with a shirt, but it's a long shot, so I don't have permission to fire. They're neither capable, they don't have the opportunity, and it's not their intent. What if they're capable of? They've got a gun in their hand, or no, they've got a gun. They've got a gun. It's in a holster on their waist, and they're stealing, T-shirts from the exchange on base. It's under my jurisdiction. Okay, so they are capable. They've got a gun. It's in a holster. And for some reason, this is a military base. This is a scenario where they're allowed to just carry that around on their waist or whatever. Most bases that I've ever been to usually says that you can't, have weapons like that on your waist. Well, let's say that they are capable. They're capable of killing me. They're committing a crime. Well, they don't have the opportunity nor the intent. Gun is still in the holster. I can't just blast somebody who's trying to steal some, trying to get the 5-finger discount on a couple of T-shirts down at the exchange. So they need to have the opportunity. They're stealing T-shirts at the exchange. I do one of those things. I go, I clear my throat. They look over. They're startled. And whenever they're startled, they have an old Vietnam flashback or some shit, and they reach for their gun. Now, I'm gonna reach for my gun. But do I just start blasting? Somebody is illegally hunting on base, and they got their shotgun out. It's in their hands, and they're hunting wabbits on base whenever they're not supposed to. Do I get to just, take those guys out? They got the gun in their hands. They're capable. They have the opportunity. The gun's in their hand. Do I just start blasting? No, they have to have the intent. I startled the guy. I do the one, and he's like, oh, geez. And, I startled the guy. He whips out, he starts reaching for his gun. I reach for my gun and everything, but I still don't have permission to fire. If he goes, oh, geez, okay, you caught me, whatever. Slap the handcuffs on him, do whatever. This guy's going to get whatever punishment for stealing, intent to steal, whatever. But no, I do not have permission to start blasting. But I find the illegal hunters in the forest, you know, and they've got their gun in their hand and stuff like that. They're breaking the law, blah, blah, blah. They're capable. They have the opportunity. It's all the way up until they go, oh, geez, it's the fuzz. And then they take that rifle, they put it up to their shoulder, and they point it at me. That's whenever I have permission to fire. Rules of engagement for, infantry and stuff like that. People out in the I don't know. I wasn't one of those people. I don't know how it works. I can give you a couple of examples. Okay, like, go watch, or better yet, read Generation Kill. It's a fantastic book. It's a pretty good HBO series. I recommend it. There's many different forms of media out there that explore your rules of engagement inside of a war zone, bloody, but that's what I was taught. But whenever it comes to, shooting somebody, I was taught to shoot, reassess, shoot. Whenever it comes to shooting, what the military is attempting to do, they're attempting to shoot they're attempting to, whatever that person has done to give them permission to shoot, they're attempting to make them quit doing that. Whatever it was, whatever it is, cut it out. That's what they're trying to do. What's more useful to the military? A dead body, or somebody that you shot, they quit doing the thing that gave you permission to shoot them, then you patched them up, they're kind of grateful that you saved their lives, even though you're the one that shot them, but they were going to do the same to you or whatever. And now that you've patched them up, you can interview them. You can you do some enhanced interrogation or whatever. You can try to find out where their people are. What's their next plan? They're going to blow up a bridge and kill like a bunch of people and everything. Just by them telling you that, you can prevent their buddies from doing so. That sort of thing. That's a hell of a lot more useful than a dead body. Dead bodies kind of hard to clean up. You've seen a bunch of true crime and everything. Forensics will get you, like it's a pain in the ass. So yeah, a dead body's not very useful to the military. The military's not trying to kill people, believe it or not. And I know that's insane. It sounds insane to you that the military is not trying to kill people, but they're not. That's not what the training is about. It doesn't help anybody whenever they just kill people. And so that's why they're trying not to do that. They're trying not to kill people. Violence, non-violence, the depiction of violence within these anti-war pieces of media, etc. Doing my best to give you the full picture and everything. But what about me? What about me and H Bomber Guy and our shared experience for two different reasons? Us at first being exposed to this piece of media that we at first don't like, but then it later becomes something that's more near and dear to us. What about that whole thing? What about me and Jarhead?